more minutes. Right, I think we can start. I'm quite excited today because, of course, we announced the winners in the very end. Yeah, this is the last lecture that we have together, and I thought, first of all, how can I find a good image that sort of symbolizes digital culture and society? So I thought of people using, the phone in the underground, but it's not really a nice image. And I think for our last session together, we should rather have an image like this. It's much nicer. So today we're going to do 3 things. So we look at what did we learn, because we sum up the whole 2 terms a little bit. So you get a bit of a feeling, what skills did you learn, what did we look at in the course. Then we look at your upcoming assignment, the final essay, and then, of course, we look at the winners. And thanks to the department, we have some British cookies and cakes. I was thinking a bit if I should bring, the British like to drink a lot of tea, but then I thought a lot of you have a background from China, and it's a bit an embarrassment if I come with my British tea to your very good Chinese tea. So I left it with biscuits and cake. But let's first look at what did we learn this term. I think we had 20 lectures divided by 4 themes. You went to 20 seminars, and we included 5 sessions on a practical project. The first theme that you learned was, in the first weeks, we looked at how the digital changes us as individuals and our social individual environment. And this is more and more important for society as well as for business, because how we individually interact with apps is quite important to understand for the world outside. So what we have new with the digital is that the digital does not just affect a group or market, it affects every individual, because we support being individuals with digital. The second thing we learned was we looked at new technologies and new developments. So we had several sessions where we looked at big data, artificial intelligence, and the effects on surveillance culture, health, and digital borders. And then we also looked at back and how the digital market changed, or how the market changed through the digital. And we discussed digital capitalism and digital labor, but also digital in finance and in marketing, and how everything gets gamified. And also how some people are excluded from the market while other people find themselves very much in the market. And the last 4th theme we had was how the digital changed society and is reaching out into society. So we looked at digital marketing and advertising, but also different forms of digital culture, digital journalism, and last we did digital politics and digital activism. So some of you might have something in their inbox which I know most of you ignored so far, which is surveys. The British culture is very strong survey culture. So for us it's quite important. You have all surveys in your emails that ask you to sit down and share how you find the course. For us teachers it's really important that you do them. So, you know, we get sort of reminded every week how many of my students have done the module survey, and I know nearly, I think, 2 or 3 of you have done the survey. So please do the survey because, you know, my head of department then asked me, Mercedes, why didn't you students like your course? None of them participates in the survey. So for us it's really important, and also for your seminar leaders, that you sit down, take 10 minutes and do those surveys. But before that, I also think we should a bit understand what skills we learned in this course, because it's a very broad scheme that you learned here. It's culture and society. These are really, it's a broad term, and now very soon, in about a few months, you go out there, maybe some of you already have part-time work or work as an intern, or you want to apply. So you need to ask yourselves, what skills did you actually learn here? How can you sell yourself when you go into an interview? So I think we can summarize that what you definitely learned is analytical skills in referring to the digital. You learn communication skills, you learn organization skills and team skills. And I'll go into depth in each one of this. And you learned this in different forms in the lecture and the seminars, the take-home exam, the essay, practical research project. So when we look at your analytical skills, I mean, the digital shifts and transforms quite a lot. So you all learn to challenge views and perspectives, which is quite important if you work out in the world, that you don't just reproduce your own view, but you reproduce the view for the people you work or for the users that needs to use your product. So one thing that's quite important, that we explored different views of perspectives in the course and also in your practical research projects. And that's something that's really important in work, but also in research. You need to work with incomplete pictures. You need to understand that you can't understand everything, but still need to move on and not being frightened by the fact that you don't understand what's going on. Just concentrate on the next step. That's something quite important. And it's also important for writing essays, not being too frightened in the beginning. It's also important for starting work at a new place. It's just an important skill. Learn to work with incomplete pictures. It's quite a skill that we try to train here. Thinking creatively, of course, that comes back to when we did your app projects and your practical research skills. One thing we did is we try to train your analytical skills by introducing you to different research methods. If you remember, I ended every lecture with a question, how can we research this topic? And that will be quite important if you want to look through this. If you think of what research method can I use for my dissertation, you can go back to the lectures and look at the very end. The third theme was always, what research method can we use? And we discussed a range, case studies, interviews, surveys, field observations, and all of them are good for your dissertation. Then you learned also a skill that I find quite important, which is problem solving. And I really love this picture because he looks so at ease, you know, he's just typing away down there. So I found it on an Instagram account. So problem solving, like she does in the very good way, is quite important. We need to test problems and apply processes, and that is something that we do when we ask you for your essay, for example. Understand the problem and how is the problem discussed. We want you to understand context. So a lot of times we ask you to not just write about one thing, but say, okay, contextualize it. What are the numbers around something? Do some research, so, you know, and explain what you're going to do. And you learn to make decisions based on different factors. So for example, in your essay, in the end normally you have a summary and a conclusion, which is a decision. But you also learn decisions in your practical research project, and there you learn decisions to make in a team, and that's quite important skill for work. Yeah, managing complexity and ambiguity, that's the world we live in. So we learn this by definitely research. Academic research always deals with complexity and is open for complexity. Things do not have to be clear as long as you explain them. And we learn to apply solutions, which you all did really wonderful in your practical research project. The last skill you learned is team organization and communication. And again, this is something I found on Instagram, which I like very much. So you have this picture from this guy here, who's like really lovely picture. And then he says, the only way I could pull these photos off is with a great support system. And you can see 3 of his friends holding him over the flowers and one making the picture. And so that is a lot of times something that we shouldn't forget. We need a network, we need friends, we need to collaborate to do something. And that is, I think, quite important. And we try to train this with you by, planning. Planning is identifying sources of information, reviewing, synthesizing literature. And even if you write your essays, you are allowed to ask your friends what they think of what work you did. It's not that you can't discuss your essays amongst each other, and I think learning from peer to peer is really, really good. You should not have someone else write the essay for you, but it's absolutely fine to get feedback. And it's quite important. It's difficult to give feedback. You don't want to say something negative to your friend, but it's quite important to say something negative so that people can learn. So something that's quite important is involving others and including others' view. That's something we train in essay writing when we have different opinions about an issue. But it's also something that, of course, you practically did in your practical research projects. Team organization and roles was part of your research projects, and visualization of presentation as well. So what I think, and I hope you agree, what you now have by taking those courses so far is you should have an overview over current technology developments that are relevant for society. You should have what we call a systematic understanding how the digital transforms culture and society. Now, one thing you will hopefully also all learned is with the digital, you need to continuously follow it, because if you now sit back for a year and then you think, oh, I can use my knowledge of digital culture and society, that digital will be somewhere completely else. So you need to keep up and it's what we call lifelong learning now. But yeah, I think the deep understanding is to understand that the digital continuously transforms and also therefore leaves you with new opportunities to understand and to embrace yourself for work and for your private life. And then the last thing is a global point of view. And I think by coming here and studying that's definitely something that you all got here, but me as well. And I normally I know now more about Chinese culture than I did before. I never, probably half of it was not correct what I told you. I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm afraid because you know your culture much better than I do, and then I research and I want to bring in examples that you can recognize yourself in. But of course, I've been in Shanghai for a week and in Beijing for a week, and if I use examples from your country, I might be completely wrong. So, but there you go. I definitely learned a lot about other people's views, and I think it is important, and I think it's quite good that you all travel, that you all study somewhere else, and that you all learn different languages, because I think we are going towards a global world, and this will be more and more the case. And even though sometimes when you're back in your own country, people don't understand what your experience really is, but I think it's quite important. And business, certainly at the top, can absolutely understand that this is a really, really good skill. So, well done for doing that. So I think you are ready to analyze, develop, and communicate, or in other words, you are ready to work, or you are ready to graduate. But before that, your final assessments. Sorry. So you know what your task is, but I'll run you through a few points I find quite important, and also from marking your take-home exam, I want to give you some feedback so you can improve if you think you need to, or stay on the same wonderful level you find yourself already. So you know we have a 4,000-word essay, and you just need to answer one question, not two. And we look for a well-structured argument and that you engage with academic literature. So well-structured means it's 4,000 words. Write subsections, subheadlines. Don't just write the whole text. You need to structure it so that we see that. And we, of course, you know, we want you to engage with academic literature, Harvard-style referencing. Some of you, not just you, also other students in this university, the reference list was in numbers, its last name and alphabetically. And Harvard-style looks like this. And in your essays, if you have key literature, use the page number. It's quite important. Where do we find it? If you quote a book, well, you know, you can tell me anything where you find your argument in the book. It might be 300 pages. I'm not going to read that. So we try to be precise when we write essays. So really write down which page number something can be found. Something that's important in academic literature is that people can follow your steps really. The questions, I think all of you have read by now. So we have 5 questions, and I'm not sure, I don't want to read through all of them, I just point to them. You can read them up on Keats, of course. So we have one on the notion of work in contemporary capitalism, and you should discuss this with relevant literature and examples. We have one that is reshaping finances or marketing, again, relevant examples, concrete technologies to demonstrate the changes. Just one. So if you pick question 2, you don't need to write for reshaping finances and reshaping marketing. You pick A or B, yeah? Not both. Same as for question 3. We try to make it as rich as possible, so we are only allowed to give you 5 questions. So we fold into those questions more options, so you can have more topics. So question 3 is, critically explore the role of digital technologies in our societies for the public sphere and journalism, for expressing protest and alternative culture. I have written C here, that's wrong, there are just 2 options. I'm sorry. 4 is explore the role and influence of video games for digital culture and society. 5 is explore the questions of inequality and bias in our digital society. So they're all critical questions, which think critically, what does the digital do and how can we do it better? But if I ask you, what is the same for all 5 questions? Did I forget one? No. What's the same for all of them? There are numbers of things that all of them have in common. Or for all of them, your task is to develop an essay question. What will your essay look at? You should put it in your introduction and state it. So it's not, first of all, you have the assignment topic, and then you develop your essay question. You can specifically say, I want to look at this topic for this field, or for this region, or with these 3 examples, but, you know, narrow it down. So narrow the assignment task down in the introduction. You need to go from the general to the specific. Find a specific issue, problem, region you want to analyze in light of that question. So you do not need to talk about, your first task is to own the question, to make it your individual approach. Does that make sense to everyone, yeah? So you don't have to say, I'm now, if you answer the question truly as it is and you don't narrow it down, we would ask you to do a PhD. So the first task, therefore, that is typical for an essay is that you narrow it down to a question which you can explore and answer. So for example, how digital labor changed in whole China is not an essay question because, whole China again is a PhD. So you say, I'm looking for this, how digital labor changed in this kind of field of work in this region in China. So narrow it down, make it precise. So the next thing is discuss with references to relevant examples. That's in all essay questions, and use relevant academic literature. So the first thing that is really, really important is using examples and discuss them. So some of the pages that follow now might not be legible from the very back, but you can download them, and some of them I made a bit full, so you can download them and look them up at home. So one thing is important when you discuss digital technology, do it in depth. So you need to make sure to introduce the example and explain why it's relevant. You cannot just say, well, I'm talking about social media and therefore I'm talking about WeChat. Why did you pick WeChat? You need to explain why you picked it. Because one reason would be it's the biggest social network at the moment in China. And then you look up a number, how many users are on WeChat? And then you say, this is a relevant example, and you have communicated that. Oops. This wasn't supposed to happen. Next one. So explain why it's relevant. So my example is Apple. Now the explanation comes. Apple is my example. Use here as it is the most successful phone retailer according to the Times. Written by Day, 2017 is a good example. Or Twitter, which is a small network with 321 million users, but influential according to The Guardian, written by this guy. So not just another example. They need to also be linked to each other and linked to the argument. So we want examples in depth. We don't want you to list in your long essay 10 examples. We want you to explore one and really know a lot about it. If you pick WeChat as an example, I want you to really know everything. You don't need to tell me everything, only what's relevant for your question, but who's the CEO? What's the strategy of the company? How is it working with its users? What's going on? To really describe your example and what's relevant for your essay question, you need to really study the example. So then also if you have an essay question as, for example, explore games, you just don't explore 3 or 4 different games because they are all games. So you need to understand, why did I pick those 4 examples of games? How are they linked? How do they help me to answer my essay? So they are linked to the argument and they're linked to each other. So they should not be 3 different things. You can pick more, but it's not so good to pick 10 or 15. Less is more. They have all to do with your topic, but 3 different things that show something particular for your essay question. So this is the difference, example versus relevant example. So the relevant examples, they show different aspects, contrast and compare. And they are also deeply linked. You explain why they are there. You know why you picked WeChat and why you didn't pick Twitter, or there's a reason for it, why you picked an example. Does this make sense to all of you? Yeah? Okay, so not like this. Don't just pick 3 things, or pick 3 things while they are blue. You need to find a connection. Introduce it and contextualize it. Point out the aspect that is important in the course of your argument. This aspect shows in the light of my argument that. And last one. Examples also need support, reference. A lot of times in your take-home exams, that hasn't happened. How do you do that? How do you support examples? Like you write about a technology, easiest thing is because, you know, if you find academic literature describing it, wonderful, but not all digital technology, some of it is too new. What do you do then? You can do two things. You can look if something has been written in the news about it. The news is an objective source. You should not just, you know, for your examples, it's fine if you quote the news. Or if you really, let's say, you look at Instagram posts, and this is also important for your dissertation, if you look at social media or anything on the web, quote it. It has a URL, so you can quote it. So I have two slides which I'll not discuss in detail, but you can look it up. How to cite social media. So you need to find the real name. If there's no real name, you use the username. And there are two examples. You might add Instagram, WeChat to let us know which platform it has been published on. And this is one example. And you indicate, which I find quite funny here, type of social media. So if the person posted an image, or if it's Instagram, you post the comment, and then you say here image. You can also say image that shows da-di-da-di-da and so on. How to cite a website or news websites, the same. You try to see if there's an author that has written the text, then it's the author name first. If it is an Apple page and you look up the Apple statistics, the author is Apple. Unless there's an author name and it's a blog post by Apple. Yeah? So this is all citable, and it's all, you know, good to support your examples and say, I'm not just describing this because I thought it would be good, but other people have seen the same. So that is a common gesture that we do in Western academia. We try to create a viewpoint where many people have an input. I never say stuff on my own. I always say stuff with other people. So that's why I constantly quote. All right, so I think that's the last point. No, don't list examples, discuss them, explain what's their role, and use relevant academic literature. Quoting, something you all are a bit shy. It's quite good. So, but let's first come to this. Oops. The difference between descriptive and analytical writing. What is the difference? Most of you have a tendency to write descriptive and not analytic. It's not so easy. I completely admit that. So description lists information, facts, and aspects. The analysis starts often with a description, but the description is only the first step. Then you perform a second step. And the second step is you interpret the fact. So first you present it and said, this looks like this, so many people are on this, and so on and so on. And then you do a second step and you say, this means da-di-da-di-da-di-da. This shows, this illustrates, this, and so on. So you need to explain what you just show. So you show first and then you interpret as a second step. So that's quite important. If you want to go for a high mark, we will look for analytical sentences. So, and that's always the step. You can also not just, you know, the problem is, as soon as you just interpret and just say this shows, then it's opinion. So you first need to establish the fact, and then you interpret the fact. It's two steps. Yeah? Makes sense? Okay. So interpretation, you break the fact further down, show what it means in light of the essay question. For interpretation, the step is also, you don't just describe, you link it back to your essay question. Why is this fact important for your essay question? What does it show regarding your essay question? And so on and so on. So, compare and contrast, typical strategy, because you will have different facts and then, right, next break. One last thing I explain about the assignment, and then we have the winners. Right. Now the last thing I want to tell you is about writing styles and styles of writing. So how do you use words? And one thing in academic writing that is really, really important, no speculation, no exaggeration, and no generalization. We want precision, we want rigor, we want you to be very precise. So we also don't think what will happen in the future. If you write about a very futuristic technology, use what it is in the world now. You can't know what's in the future. If you want to write about it, you can analyze how other people speculate about it, but you yourself cannot speculate. So, yeah, speculation, exaggeration, is my second point. And I brought an example here that's from an essay. It's not your course. Don't be afraid. The impact of science and technology on social production mode is enormous. No, it's not enormous because we're in academic writing. You write needs to be taken into account. So, you know, you don't say, oh, this is gigantic, or you also don't say this is wonderful, or the beautiful person. Adjectives are not your friend anymore in academic writing. Try to describe as if you get a step away and you describe something from a distance. So in academic writing, we try to be very distant. Yeah. And here there's also a second problem. At the beginning, everyone thought. There's no everyone in academic writing. That's a second example. And by the way, this is not me who, this is from my colleague. So we are all looking for the same problem. So my colleague said here in this, this sentence says, nevertheless, with the development of artificial intelligence and the application in life, people have slowly accepted AI and the breakpoint point and so on and so on. People have slowly accepted AI. Which people? Who is these people? Who are those? So can you give me a reference which people these are? But the best thing is you say people, as author claims, have accepted that. But you can't just say people, or you can even not say scholars are interested in this. When you say scholars, bracket, and then you can say, I don't know, the name of the scholars, and then you can say scholars, but you can't just say general these people. It's easy to write that, but mark it that, you know, in the end, try to find references. Yeah, and the last thing is, I hope the last thing, use quotes to support your argument. So this is from a paper, and you can see that's the quote, that's what the author of those paper has written. The act of sharing implies a non-reciprocal behavior and, the author quotes, distributing what is ours to others for their use. The author quotes Belk, 2014, page number 96, and vice versa. This is very good writing. You can absolutely quote aspects that are important, and you should actually quote, because in Western academia you think with others. You do not just think yourself. You think in a choir, but you are leading the choir. So that's what we say in engaging with academic literature is this is engaging. And I brought a second example. So this is from another. So this is just to say if the quote is longer than 3 sentences, we normally have it lined out as here. You can see here she says, Boullier explains, this is the author, and then comes the full quote by Boullier. In the quote you have where it's from. This is also completely okay, and what's quite important, if you use a quote, you need to introduce it and you need to sum it up in the end. You can't just throw quotes in something that have nothing to do with the text. That's again what we talk, engaging with literature. So here she says, last thing is, this author asks, can the data represent an objective truth, or is any interpretation necessarily biased by some subjective filter or the way that data is clean, question mark. And then the author writes, in addition to this question, there's the issue of data errors. So the first words after a quote always link back to the quote. You just don't jump somewhere else, yeah? So introduce, as Bolli explains, as this quote shows, and then go out. So, yeah, does that make sense? Oof. All right, I need to hurry on. Plagiarism, not good. You all hopefully know what this is, don't do it. So one problem is if you are a bit afraid of writing English, you take a whole sentence, you paste it somewhere, and then you know you plagiarize, so you change a few words. Turnitin finds this. So you can see this is the student essay, and this is the original internet source. And they have changed some. Here's within the US retail market, here it says within the retail market of the United States. And it goes on and on. You can see this word has been changed, and other words have remained the same. That's no way of writing. So don't copy stuff and change words. You can quote, but then everything needs to be original. But you can't just copy stuff and change words. That's how people want to be really good, but then they end up being plagiarized. So don't copy without quoting, okay? If you quote, always quote with those quotation marks. Proofreading your essay. I'm not sure how many of you write in their private life or publish sometimes maybe. If you start going towards this direction, you will learn and notice that there are different ways of reading. You read when you write, and then there's a stage 2, which is you read to finish a text. And then you don't try to write and put the text further, but you polish the text. So you go into a different mode, which we call proofreading. Does it make sense? Do I use the same words too often? Do I really lose, where do I lose the reader? What I find really good is reading out loud. Before you hand in, sleep one night. If we write something that's also really, really tough, we lose attention. Sleep over it and read it out loud on the next day to yourself. That helps a lot to write better. You can get help for proofreading, but not for editing. It's okay if someone corrects your English. It is not okay if that person structures your text or adds stuff, yeah? So if you buy an essay, as it is possible, we live all in a world, we know that happens, Turnitin finds out. How does it find it out? Turnitin knows what you link to, and all of a sudden this does not link to literature, but it links to other student papers who also have bought this essay. Because you need to pay probably £1,000 to get an original essay that has only been written for you. All essay mills have the same essay and they change the words, as I explained to you. So you can see here, this is from a paper. We all have this submitted to King's College, but you can see submitted to the university student paper, LexisNexis, student paper, student paper, student paper, student paper, student paper. How did this happen? These papers are not available on the internet. The universities all are linked to each other. So this is a board essay. Don't buy essays. Start working early, okay? But maybe not the British one. Right, how to start your essay, and then we go on. Pick a topic, decide on an essay question you want to explore, identify the elements, and so here is one question, and there are only 3 elements there. This is the question, how has the digital transformed the notion of work in contemporary capitalism? Who has written on the digital and the notion of work? Who has written about contemporary capitalism? Who has written on digital transformation? First 3 questions, and do the same for your question you ask. So first break it down into the different aspects. Then, what technology do I want to look at in my essay? Look for examples, step 2. Yeah, digital is too broad, so you need to specify. And then can I focus on a specific group whose work has been transformed? Again, specify further. All right, I'll skip this because I want to have enough minutes for this. All right. Oops, yeah. So, we have the practical research projects you all did, and I hope I didn't forget anyone. I brought certificates that I will hand out now. And so what happened, also so you know, is, let me quickly make sure this is not happening. So what happened is when we voted, we had in both, so we have two categories in the end, right? We have the expert jury and we have the popular vote. It was very close, especially in the popular vote, I have to say, and we had in both categories 2 first places with exactly the same votes or percentages. So we have 2 first places, and then because it was so close, we decided to give 1 second place in the category of popular vote. So yeah, and the other ones are all seminar winners with 1 honorary mention. So I'm going to hand those out quickly and want to congratulate also the seminar winners get certificates. So I'll just give out 1 and then you have to distribute. And if I don't make enough, let me know. Who did iParking? Yeah? Okay. Here's your certificates. Who did Health Tracker app for the elderly, which also came very high? Then we have oops, that's wrong. We have Scanuk. Scanuk is here somewhere, there. Then we have Smart Ring. Smart Ring is over here. Can you hand this down to Smart Ring? Then we have V London. Weather here. Yeah? Who of you wanted? Okay. Pass this on. And where was the other weather here? Someone here. Oh yeah. And okay, we're nearly there. Okay, that's the honorary mention. So we're going to go a next step further. Are you excited? I hope I haven't forgot any group. So, yeah, that's good like this. We go for expert jury first, okay? We need music. Right, just to get the right feeling. First of all, we have number 2. That's actually the popular vote. So so we have 2 different things. So we have an honorary mention for the period app by the expert jury because the expert jury thought it was an outstanding use of video as a research. Whose period app? Okay, yeah, please clap. And then we have the number 2 of the expert vote that was UK tax-free. Where's UK? Which you hopefully all hope you could use. So now it's down to the last ones. And I need my... Oh, God, this is exciting. We need music. Oops. Okay. So we will have 2 number 1s. And this is the expert jury, and the expert jury had decided for 2 number 1s, and these are Panda music and green light. So the Panda music is where you get the Prince Charles expert cakes. And green light is where? Oh, I need to down it. Okay, fantastic. Also Prince Charles experts cakes. And now, what you are all much more excited about, popular vote, number 1, think of music, or we have and the number 1 is, first of all, again, second time, green light. Where's green light? Here. So you won twice, so you get more cookies, and you also get a cake. So they need help eating it. And the second one is pet sitter. Where's pet sitter? Back there. Okay, come. Pet sitter. Pet sitter is very much in the back. Has also a cake and cookies. Here you go. Congratulations. Right. And I forgot, because UK Tax App came second. They also have a cake. Where was UK Tax App again? You get the cake. Yay. Congratulations. So yeah. Oops. So I think, yeah, I hope, I mean, for me, it was the first time we did the practical research projects, and I was actually very impressed by the work you did. I think, yeah, I hope it was as much fun for you as for us. You can enjoy your cookies, or you can make friends with the people who have the cookies. Maybe offer proofreading their essay, or in exchange for a cookie or something. And I hope to see you at one of these events. So we're closing the lecture series. This is my last lecture with you. It was a real pleasure to have this lecture with you, to be honest. And we have a few events coming up. And of course, I'm not sure if you can see this, I would be especially happy if you come to this one, because I will be speaking. That's on the 29th of May. And otherwise, I hope you enjoy your time here a little. I think you should work hard on your essays, and I see some of you for your dissertations, but I think you should also travel a bit. So, thank you for a lovely tutor. And in the seminars, if you have questions about your individual essay, you get feedback in the seminars as well. Yeah?
now they just imagine we have like a 9-month-long holiday or something.
Yeah. Apart from like 6 weeks of marketing.
Oh yeah. Bye. For those of you here a bit early, I've kind of avoided bringing this up because I've asked you for feedback so many times. I keep on getting angry emails about this because some ridiculously low number of people have done the end of module feedback, which I guess you probably know about. I don't really care if I get the angry emails, but if you can fill it out while you're here, please do. Because I just feel very conscious of having asked for feedback.